Aptitude is the potential to master a specific skill or to learn a certain body of knowledge. An achievement test is a measure of mastery or proficiency in reading, mathematics, writing, science, or some other subject. Multiple intelligences was not created necessarily, but well, yeah, I guess created by Howard Gardner. He thinks it's the idea that human intelligence is comprised of a varied set of abilities rather than a single all encompassing one. So here's Gardner's multiple intelligences. He's added, there's originally there were 7, now he thinks there are 9. You can read more about these in your book, but basically, if you have one of these, you're high on whatever that encompasses. So, like a bodily kinesthetic awareness, he thinks would be really great. Like professional athletes probably have this because they have an awareness of their body, how it moves, how it functions, and they're kind of at the top of their game on that. Same linguistic may be a great writer, musical intelligence, someone who has a real ear for, musical art, for example. Anyhow, he does think that the way that we're teaching in schools is a little bit too narrow, and we're not allowing kids to reach these their potential in some of these different areas. Multifinality is just this idea that one cause can have many manifestations. For example, people may have similar histories. So, a lot of people come from having, I don't know, traumatic experiences. Maybe they're a victim of sexual abuse or one of their parents died, etc. Any number of things could have happened. But a lot of people have those things happen, but then they may have different developmental outcomes. You have a lot of kids coming from the same background. However, maybe one succeeds, one doesn't, and whatever that looks like. Equifinality is going to be one symptom having many causes. For example, you have different experiences early in life. So, maybe your parents divorced or physical abuse, substance abuse. But then you can have a lot of kids have depression. How they got the depression may look different. So it could have been from those things I mentioned. So these are early life experiences. So different experiences, but the outcome is all the same. And you have depression, for example. Comorbidity is just the presence of 2 or more disease conditions at the same time that can occur in the same person. So if you have one thing going on, you're much more likely to have multiple things occurring. We're currently using the DSM-5. Things certainly probably are overdiagnosed in the DSM-5, but they're also arbitrary. There's a lot of debate over whether it's healthy to just use this set of criteria and say, okay, this is it. If you have these 5 things, you have depression. But if you only have 4 things, you're fine. You don't have depression. So it's a really interesting setup, but it is what's commonly accepted and used in hospitals, therapy, etc. Certainly, I think ADHD is probably currently overdiagnosed based on DSM-5 criteria. because we do have increasing incidences, but I think a lot of times we're just immediately jumping in and saying, oh, this person has ADHD, without really checking for other signs, other symptoms. Maybe they're just a kid and need, a physical outlet, whereas, we used to give them that space, as we've talked about, but now that's less likely a thing. I certainly think ADHD is real. I don't necessarily think that as many people have it as are currently diagnosed, which is really frustrating. DSM-5 does recognize learning disorders, which is new to this edition of the DSM-5. So dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. The DSM-5 diagnosis of specific learning disorder now includes disabilities in both perception and processing of information. This is evident in unexpected low achievement in reading, math, or writing. Children with specific learning disorders have difficulty mastering skills that most children acquire easily. This kid uses large prism glasses. It keeps the letters from jumping around on the page. Each child with dyslexia does need individualized treatment. For example, these glasses only help some kids. It doesn't help. It doesn't help children who find reading difficult. Equifinality applies to autism spectrum disorder. A child can have symptoms for many reasons. They haven't quite figured out an exact diagnosis, why, what experiences, what genes, whatever is leading to ASD. We haven't quite figured it out. No single gene causes the disorder. It makes treatment difficult, and an intervention that helps one child ends up being worthless for someone else. Communities have always had some children with special needs, physical, emotional, and neurological disorders of all kinds. In some eras and even today in some nations, the education of such children has been neglected. Many children were excluded from normal life, but now in the United States, every child is entitled to school.